Hello, welcome back to HENOSIS. I forgot what episode this is, but we have very many interesting guests today. So first of all, Philip Helmet.
My name is Philip. I'm also a member of the HENOSIS team, and I've been close friends with both Sophia and Skander for a long time. So happy to be co-hosting today, and obviously our main guest for today,
Mr. Hudendal.
Well, yes, I think I am the bearded economics teacher that entered the fray a few months ago at ISH, so I'm quite privileged to be invited to this podcast. It's my first, so
Thank
excited.
you. No, we're definitely high quality.
Yeah, be gentle, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you start by briefly explaining your experience as a teacher? So like where you've gone, what you've done, where you've taught.
and also why you became a teacher. That's quite a
Yeah, my why story is probably the best. I think I shared with you in class. I think I'll start there. I was never going to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My grandfather's a principal. We have two lines in our family. You're either going to banking or you're going to teaching. So I studied economics to become a rich businessman one day and run the stock market. And after I finished university, I realized now it's not for me. Or now I realized that after working in the bank with mortgages for a while, it was a slow death. So I left and traveled the world for about 4 years, just not really with any responsibilities, just life experiences. And I was on the Andaman Islands, which is in the middle of nowhere. If you look at a map, they're closer to Thailand than they are to India, but they actually belong to India. And it takes you 4 days on a boat to get there. And only, I think, was it 10 or 14 foreigners were allowed to go every 2 weeks to these islands. So I took a ferry there. I want to explore the unknown. So I was on the Andaman Islands. And I got to the main port, Port Blair, and got some of the local folk to take me to a smaller uninhabited island, about 3 of us. And I was on this island. You can walk around it in about a day. And I was walking around this island and saw a group of boys playing cricket. And I started playing cricket with them there on the beach. They didn't even have equipment. It was just I had to have a stick and a ball rolled up really tight. And I started playing cricket with them and working with them and explaining things to them. And in that moment, I just had this massive epitome of realization. That's it. That's what I need to do. I need to be working with students in whatever capacity. And in that moment, I finished my trip in India and went back to university and studied teaching and became a teacher. And then I decided, okay, where can I start? And I started off in Taiwan. I taught kindergarten kids this big, 4-year-olds, my first year as an English teacher while I was doing my teaching degree. And then I moved into an international school in Taiwan, and then to another international school in Taiwan. And then to an IB school, and then I went to Malaysia after 15 years in Taiwan. And Malaysia, then to Shanghai, to Maastricht at United World College, and then 3 months ago to here. So that's the journey in short.
Quite a journey, eh?
It is.
So it's a terrible decision to become a teacher then, right?
I don't know, if you ask my wife, she will say, she recommends, like my mother did, don't become a teacher. And I'm like, why? It's the best job in the world. It's like, you work too hard, you do this. I said, but I think there's few jobs that you can do that give you such satisfaction to work with a human element, to work with people and discuss ideas and help them shape things. That's beautiful, right? To be part of that journey and to do that every day. That's privilege.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you ever feel like a sense of like really hard responsibility when there's a student that, let's say, doesn't follow along, or like that you feel like
Sometimes you do. I think it's how you frame it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can see it as this is a problem that I have to deal with, or it's like, okay, there's a challenge. I'm going to try and figure this one out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, first of all, when you look at if you're in a classroom, right, don't see a student. You need to teach to the human. Because we humans, before we're anything else, right? We're a human.
Mm-hmm.
So in each human, we're clan animals. We're herd. We like to be as a herd. So that person is part of our herd. So just working with that person, figuring out what he or she needs, if you can figure that out, that's when you experience success as a teacher. Not the student who gets a 7. Students will get a 7 anyway. It doesn't matter really how great the teacher are. It's helping a student who's struggling to do better or realizing something about themselves. There's the power. Yeah.
You mentioned that you went on a 4-year trip to India, or just a 4-year trip
That wasn't
traveling?
a 4-year trip to India. It started off in London. Because growing up in South Africa, of course, grew up, under apartheid in South Africa. So a South African passport was probably one of the worst things you can get because you couldn't go anywhere. And then the world opened up. So South Africans, when I finished university, we had this 2-year working holiday visas that allowed us access to England. So I want to slice of that pie. I want to go and see, right? And I had such a limited mindset. I was such a conservative Afrikaans Christian boy. I mean, I remember I have this image in my head when I got on the plane, right? I had my backpack, my South African hat on, and the flag. I'm a South African, and arrived in London and with a very narrow mind of the world. And I was just going to go for a year, go back, marry my girlfriend, have tons of children, live happily ever after. But things changed, right? As I got to London, I realized, man, this is insane. There's all these different people that are challenging my viewpoints, challenging how I think about things. And then I'm like, okay, I can be my stubborn self, or I can allow these experiences to shape me as a person. And that led to working in London, going to Turkey, and then meeting different people, and just kept traveling. I always went back to London when the money was finished.
But it's a very big sort of step when you have a very narrow mindset. It takes a lot to sort of say, okay, I'll let these viewpoints challenge me.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard. Like, you deluded yourself into your idea, into this illusion of a reality, and when that reality is questioned by these different viewpoints and whatnot, it must be very difficult.
It was, and that's why your first reaction is to push against it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, no, man. Like, my first thing is like, how can you not believe in God? How's that? Because remember, I was surrounded by I was in such a bubble. Everybody I knew, everybody I interacted with had the same viewpoint as me. It's that echo chamber. Nobody challenged me. We all saw the same. So as soon as I faced that challenge, I was against it. But you bump against the same wall time and time again. You either one of two options. You're going to revert back and go back to where you came from, or you're going to say, why are these people thinking that way? What is it and you start, and that's the first knock on the door. It's like, why are they thinking differently? And that's slowly. It's not a process like this. It's hard to let go of your anchor, and especially if religion was your anchor, or we all have anchors, right? To let go of that. It's not an immediate process, but it was a slow process, and I think I was riddled with guilt and all these things that I had to process over many years. And I think when I got to Australia, or towards the tail end of my second trip to India, where I really made peace with things and accepted kind of the new me in a way.
How has that changed though? Like, if you don't mind me asking, do you still have that like faith in God, or has that like kind of completely gone? Because
I think that's I've let go of a structured belief in a God. Right.
Because I think a lot of people that are still religious are kind of scared that the more, let's say, westernized their world becomes, etc., that religion kind of goes away. But I think if you learn to kind of knock down those walls, but still kind of have faith in whatever, that everything can kind of coexist, right?
Yeah. I think that's my journey, and I think my way of believing shapes and changes. It's fluid and dynamic. I refuse to have myself boxed in by a belief system. I think it's Gurdjieff that said in Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, if you want to blow your mind, this big dense book, have a dip in it. But it's about, now he's seen as a bit of a crazy Russian philosopher, right? But in essence, one of the things he said is like, who you are as an individual in that moment, in a sense, right, it's not really who you are, because who you are you've been conditioned into a certain way of thinking and believing about the forces that shape you, your education, your family, your religion, your culture, your politics. All these things have shaped you. Then you grab onto these things as truths or things that you believe, but it's actually been passed on to you. So he said, if we really know who you are as an individual, you need to let go of everything. And the only things that you can know for sure are those things that you have experienced. Because that is your truth. Because you have experienced it, you can hold on to it. I'm not saying I believe everything that he said, but that kind of things kind of broke down some of those walls for me in how I viewed the world.
And when you did start traveling and you moved to London and all these other places, would you say that you were one of the first people in your family to sort of move away from the environment that you were in South Africa at the beginning?
Yeah, I was definitely the first.
So
And my mother and I went back after I think 6 months or a year in London. I went back, and my sister was working in the same small town where my parents lived, and I convinced myself. I said, "Man, you cannot stay here. You got to come to the other side. You have to come and look." And I spent some time with my sister trying to convince her, and then I went off and I did a 3-month trip into Africa. And disappeared into Africa for a while. Yeah, and then when I came back, my sister quit her job and bought a ticket to London.
That's where it's
So I walked into the house, all kind of bearded up, tanned from my time in Africa, and my mum was sitting there. We need to talk. It's like I've corrupted my sister in a sense, where my perspective was I've kind of, freed her up a little bit and, sold something else to her.
Mm-hmm.
So there was definitely that kind of different viewpoint at that time.
So you would say that it wasn't at first from your family the fact that you'd completely, veered away from what was going on at the beginning in your life.
Definitely. That's hard for them because
Yeah.
I'm moving away from them, like in terms of geographical space, which is not as bad. But I think what was harder for them to take, that I was moving away from them in terms of religion or in terms of how I understood the world or made sense of the world that I lived in. I was questioning God, right? I was questioning religion, and as a Christian, that's not something that you're supposed to do, because it's not right. Is you need to believe, you need to trust, and I was opening up a door that shouldn't have been open. So I think that was probably the hardest part for them.
In what do you think that traveling, and if you could bring up like specific examples, because I went to India like earlier on this year in February, and I only had the chance to be there for like a week. And when I was there, my perspective, I mean, I grew up in Tanzania, so I kind of know generally what different environments look like. But when I went there, my perspective was also really broadened.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it's like for someone who'd only been to London and South Africa. How was it to how did traveling to India and what experience in India?
I think
What was the
I have
reaction?
goosebumps.
Yeah.
Just as you asked it, the goosebumps popped out because mentally I was just going back to that moment in time.
Insane.
Right. Okay. Yeah. London. There's not much difference in Westernized society, and I did a trip to Turkey for a month before that. But my first full-on
trip,
9-month traveling overland from India back to the UK. That was a big thing. And I bought a one-way ticket to India. There's no return. It was just a one
just
day.
there.
And it's funny how that happened, because at that time I was I kind of struggling with myself. I still had my girlfriend in South Africa at that time, but I was forming a new life over here. And then I think we had a conversation. It was, I think, a month before Christmas or something. I was humming and hawing, should I go to India? And she said, "Oh, I just want to let you know, I found someone else." And I'm like, "Great!" No, at that moment I thought,
Come on.
no, I felt fantastic, because I felt like I was allowed freedom, or because I didn't want to. It was hard for me to break up with someone. It was something I've never been good at. So I didn't have that. I was set free in a sense. And the next day I bought my ticket to London. Oh, not to London, to India. Yeah, to India, one way to Bombay.
And which year was that you first went to India?
That was 19. What time? I got to England in 96. It was 97. Yeah, 97.
And what was in
December? We got a ticket. It was a cheap ticket. It was on Christmas Eve. We got cheap tickets with, what was the airline name? Syrian Arab Airlines. Syrian Arab Airlines. That was a journey in itself, because somebody died on the plane. So I had to fly with a dead person.
So it just kind of passed.
It was the insane. That's how the trip started. It's this insane trip. Like I was traveling with this kind of amazing artist, John. He had these long dreadlocks, all tats and stuff from New Zealand. We went to India together, and we were sitting in the Syrian Arab Airlines. So we stopped off in Damascus, right? So halfway on the way from London to Damascus, somebody had a heart attack, and 3 rows to the left. We had the seats on this side. In the middle over there, somebody had a heart attack. Well, we didn't know it at the time. There was just a lot of scuffling and talking going on. And then they chased the people off the seats, and the passed away person or the dead body, they laid them on the seats, and the people who used to sit there, they let them sit in the aisle. So it was like 4 hours. That's insane. So 4
So
hours.
some guy
in the
just
aisle.
passed out on the.
Yeah, he's dead there, and then
Oh.
it's a strange feeling, right? When you're okay, dead guy there. It's
You just don't look back.
it's a strange thing.
So
And then
weird.
we landed in Damascus, and the ambulances or the people came up and they took the dead body away, and none of the announcements were in English. I think it was in Arab or maybe another language or something. And then we took off again, and then we landed in India, and that was an indication. Okay, this trip
Gonna be
Gonna be
rough.
exciting.
it's gonna blow your mind because
Yeah.
it started like this. It's going to be interesting.
Were you anxious at any point in India?
Because of the dead body?
No, just
Because
being so far from home, and like you only got one ticket there, and like money and everything.
Yeah.
Were you ever scared at some point in your experience in India? Like you're in Goa and you're like, what am I doing here?
I don't know, because I was quite young at that time. My student debt has been paid off, so I was really quite free. So it's I think I was filled more with this kind of anticipation and eagerness, or anxious to kind of see what this place had to offer, because I was, and this is just part of my personality. I've always liked putting myself into a different and interesting situation and see what happens. How does that affect me, or how do I affect the situation? So I must have been a bit scared, but
In a good way.
when I think about it, I was like, just that excitement, just that craziness of arriving there was amazing.
Craziest experience there? Like the biggest
the biggest shock, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's, you cannot beat
Everything's
India for
there.
shock value. It's like, and it's everything. It's an assault on the senses in every imaginable way. Your smell, your sight, your feeling, your just like mentally making sense of things was a challenge. It's like because you grow up with a westernized thought and things work in a certain way,
Yeah.
and then you experience something that doesn't fit into your model of thinking. It's not this can't be real. You wonder sometimes, am I stuck in a Salvador Dali painting? What is going on here? You know, am I a character in a Hunter S. Thompson novel? What's taking place here? Right? You have that happen. It's like, and even when we arrived in India, the taxi ride, right? We got a taxi in the airport because but even we get our bags. You know, you have the conveyor belt, your bag goes around, and you wait until your bag
Yeah.
comes. And then we waited forever, and then we realized there's a guy at the end who just dumps all the bags on the floor. So there's only one time around. So there's this mountain of luggage on the side there. It's like, well, okay, this is how we roll. So go and get the bags, and then you go out and you get assaulted by every taxi driver to try to get a ride from. So eventually get a ride. So we put our bags in the car, and the guy said, okay, push. So we had to push the taxi to the gas station because there was no gas in the taxi. And then we had to pay him up front so he can put gas in to earn the money. And I'm like, this is
An interesting.
it's an interesting experience.
So like immediately when you arrived, it sort of already started hitting you this sort of like that it's completely different to anything you've experienced
Yeah, and
before.
it was like I said, it's a complete salt on anything, on your complete being. But for me, in a good way. Like there's two ways you can take that. You can take it as this is too much, or you can just open yourself up and let it, you ride out the wave.
What was the biggest moment of sort of disbelief? Like for instance, when I went to Varanasi, Benares, on the
Yeah.
river Ganges, and I saw the cremation of the people into the.
Yeah, that's intense.
That for me, that was like what, and then like the cows just everywhere and a couple monkeys and stuff.
Yeah.
That was insane. But is there anything sort of bigger than that? Because obviously you spent 9 months there, so.
Yeah.
Are there any remote places or places that not many people got to experience where you really had something
Yeah,
insane?
I think there's a couple, and it's changed over time. Like the first time I went there to the second time.
Yeah.
Like, but one of the most amazing places I think when I went the first time around was Hampi in India. It's an old temple town. It's not a big city around it. It's just these old ancient temples. It's just scattered across this landscape next to a river. And there's loads of sadhus who go there for religious purposes. And there's just this village sitting there. And when you hike around there or walk around these places, just there's a sense of oldness. Like when you go to a forest with really old trees, there's a sense of these things have been here a while. There's a sense of, I don't know, I was just struck with awe walking around there and happy. And there's not a single hotel. I think I stayed in the guy's barn, like on this, he had this kind of straw mattress, because there were no such thing as hotels at that time there. I think now if you go there, there's probably going to be a couple of hotels because it's been discovered. But one place I think that will never be discovered is Omkareshwar. It's not on any guidebooks as far as I know. And I took 3 long to get to Omkareshwar. It took us 2 days to get there. And it's a massive, it's an important pilgrimage site for Hindus, especially for those who revere Hanuman, the monkey god.
Yeah.
So what's special about Omkareshwar, it's an island in the middle of the river, and the temple is built on the island in the river. And it's a strange place because you go there, there's the main town, and then there's this long bridge across to the island where the temple is built. And on the mainland is red-faced monkeys. They're not the descendants of Hanuman. It's the black-faced monkeys are the descendants of Hanuman, and they live on the island. So we walk across there, and we met the school teacher, and he said, "Yeah, he has a room for us on the island." It was just the room was this size with a door and a window. There's no
like
window. I'm using the term window liberally here. It's a hole. It's a hole for air to come in. So, oh man, the memories come back. So we rented this space there on this island, right? And they're surrounded by these black-faced monkeys, right? And there's no red-faced monkeys there. They're just on the mainland, only on the island. And you go to but the temple experience, I think that's a pivotal moment in my life because I went with these Hanuman devotees into the temple, and as far as I could tell at that moment, I was the only kind of foreigner in there. And they gathered outside, they're all dressed in black and stuff, and they go into the temple where all the sadhus are sitting, and the people hang flowers around me, and they float flowers around me. You go into this temple, and there's this energy that builds up as you go towards the center of the temple on the inside. And I think in the middle or the top side of the temple, and that's what makes it special. There must be a scientific explanation for it, but they have this phallic symbol, but the water flows upwards. So you look at it, it must be, I don't know if it's at an angle or what it is, but in the moment when you see it there, it doesn't make sense to you because it flows upwards. The water goes up and then comes down. And that's what made the place holy. And you go in there and people go into a kind of trance or something. And in that moment, I was scared. I thought that energy or that the feeling I was experiencing at that time, I thought it was like I'm being attacked by a demon or something. That's how I kind of rationalized myself. And I let go a little bit. And then I just realized it's just the energy of these people or the experience for them or whatever. And I came out of the temple, and I think that's a moment where I realized, like, I cannot subscribe to a God or a way of thinking as the only right way. As I think as Khalil Gibran who said, never say I found the truth, say I found a truth, right? Because as soon as you say the, you box. And at that moment, and I read that book, a few months prior to that, but in that moment I realized the actual truth of that I was actually creating my own prison. Yeah,
it's insane.
I got goosebumps.
So good.
But I tell you honestly, in there it's this feverish energy, and it's just me. Nobody looks like me. I'm there, and it's just let go, and then I felt the experience.
But what do you think that energy is? What do you think? Why do you think that energy comes to be? Do you think that there is a reason beyond sort of our understanding that an energy like that can exist? Because
that's the eternal question, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think scientifically, not that to my knowledge, can describe that, but it's that feeling, like what you felt when you said, yeah. Well, what causes that? Because you're not cold,
Yeah.
right? What is it that causes us this connected or that feeling? Is it God? Like Christians would maybe say something is like the Holy Ghost or something, but there's how do we define that, or what is that togetherness? Because I've been in churches too where the people speak in tongues, and I've had that same feeling of energy or a surge of something. I don't know what it is, but it's there. I just don't think it belongs to a religion or a people or.
But I don't think
Defining it is hard for me, right?
I don't think it belongs to religion at all, though, right?
No,
you
no.
can experience it in so many ways. Like when you hear music, I sometimes have that same feeling, you know, like.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like if Grateful Dead does that to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's insane. I think maybe perhaps religion is our way of different religions comprise different ways of rationalizing
Yeah.
that feeling.
Yeah, I agree with that because we want to understand.
But we can't.
So
Exactly,
if we cannot get to understanding, then we need to shift that to, okay, there must be another being or something else that determines that, because our methods or ways maybe cannot quantify it or understand it or verbalize it.
And
I
in
think
doing
that-
so, it's limited.
But I think that kind of takes away from it, right? Being like, oh, that's the Holy Ghost or whatever other, you know? Because I think it's a really human experience, right? And what you said
I
before,
think
like
so,
connecting
yeah.
human to human,
Yeah.
or like that's kind of the only time you can experience that. So I don't,
But it's funny that my first thought was that I was being attacked by a demon, because I've been taught or conditioned into that something like that is a demon trying to take over your body or something, right?
It's also that it's such a. I mean, I presume that many people haven't experienced an experience with that sort of magnitude of energy, and I feel like when you feel something like that, or when you experience something like that, you're so taken aback, and there's no way to rationalize it, that you kind of just slap on whatever sort
Because
of
you want to make
human
sense of
level.
that.
Yeah, because if we can't make sense of it, we immediately feel discomfort and therefore fear. And then,
And
but
also,
I think accepting, that's one of the hardest things. It's like just let go a little bit and accept, and it's okay not to know everything. Not saying do not follow a quest of trying to know as much as you can, but just enjoy it, even if you don't know naturally completely what it is.
and I think also the issue with, as you said, like different religions, what they do is they try to quantify this sort of what we don't understand. But by doing that, depending on where you were raised and the way you were raised, you're also told that unless you're following this one thing, all these other things that people say that exist, or people that, like, you know, these people in the temples and in other places all over the world that have been doing this for hundreds of years, and you're just told that, and you're just told that they've just made it up, and they sort of believe in something that doesn't exist. But why would there be these civilizations that have been doing this for so long, and they genuinely feel something? Why is their side of it wrong, and why do you only have to follow what?
Why is their truth right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it goes back to that thing. It's not the.
It's
Let people allow their own spaces and times and things. Why do we have to be so correct?
Yeah.
Right. Well, what do you win by being correct? I'm great. I'm right, Dan. My God's better than your God.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's not a competition.
And
it
why
shouldn't be. It's quality of life, being decent, you know, and experiencing just the ability or the opportunity or the chance to experience that sense of emotion or that what I've experienced. That's good enough. It doesn't have to have a title. It doesn't have to belong to a group or a people. Like you were saying before, it doesn't even need to have a name.
And us being told, so some people being like told by, well, I don't know, their own religion not to believe in other things, they're limiting themselves by not ever being able to, well, not ever searching for their own sort of, you know, their own experience of it.
Yeah.
And they might never actually be able to get to that point where they've actually found out their own truth, and they're only with this sort of illusion that a truth exists, but they've never actually experienced it themselves. Yeah. And I feel like if people were to not have to follow something that's been, you know, implemented on them, if they were to genuinely search for stuff, people would have a better sort of,
I think so,
peace with themselves instead of.
I agree, because it's hard breaking down walls that's been either created by yourself or with your family or something. Exactly. It's like if you're being. That's why. For you sitting here, you grow up in such an look, each of you are from a different culture, different experience, right? To have that opportunity to live and grow up together, you are, no matter what, there's going to be a much more kind of open-mindedness compared to me. I went to a white Afrikaans school, a Christian white Afrikaans school. So I'm a little fish swimming in the fishbowl in circles, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think in each generation, I'd like to believe or I used to believe, will be a bit more open-minded until we had the surge of nationalism globally,
Yeah,
right?
that
But we
was-
need to go back to that kind of where we allow each other to be more open, find out the truth for yourself. It's painful, right? To let go of something that you held for long,
Yeah.
but I think it's necessary sometimes.
It's really scary. I mean, for myself even, I think everyone either is right now or I mean, inevitably we're born in a box, right? Like we're, regardless of how open-minded you believe you are, you're always brought up with conditioning, and you know the very nature of our minds seek to rationalize, and that's another condition that we need to break down if we want to achieve just the true sort of us. And so when you're faced with the idea that your reality is false and that everything that you've conceived in the past is false, I was like, I've sort of experienced that, and when I experienced it, you know, I broke down completely, and it's a very difficult. I think it's a very difficult experience to overcome.
Of course it is, because it's like a safety blanket for a little kid, right? Like if you take that away, that sense of security is gone. But it's making that step or stepping into that unknown sometimes. It's hard, but doing it, right, it breaks it creates a whole new world of understanding to you. Because if I never went to travel, if I didn't have the experiences I am, I don't think I would have been able to experience the level of happiness or the level of sorrow and the different things that I'm able to experience now, because I would have limited myself. I think I think it might have been also Khalil Gibran who said that sorrow carves the bowl that will contain your happiness. And I think what he's trying to mean is like the more you allow yourself to feel or open to experience, the more you'll be able to contain or have in the future.
Definitely.
But going all the way back to what you said about when you came back and told your sister, like, you have to go here, you have to, and your mom thought you were like corrupting her.
Oh
or
yeah, I was
whatever.
corrupting my young
Yeah.
sister, leading her astray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, because maybe as a teacher you have a bit of a biased perspective, but do you think it's like ethical to kind of tell people open your world up, or open your mind or experience more things, or do you think you should let them kind of do their own thing?
That's interesting, but okay, allowing someone to do their own thing, yeah. But it was still my sister's choice in a sense, right?
Yeah.
I just provided another opportunity that could be taken or could not. So from my parents' perspective, they think I was doing the wrong thing, but I was just creating an alternative.
Yeah.
I think if I was actively really promoting her, you have to do it, then I think maybe it would have been unethical, right? And maybe I pushed a bit, but I didn't push extremely hard. That's why I was so surprised when she came back.
Yeah.
I think there's a fine line there, maybe. But unless you present people with the options, how would they know? Yeah. Forcing them, that's different. Like you cannot force a person to become open-minded. And I wouldn't say my sister classifies really as open-minded. She's just, moved into another culture. She still lives in England. But she's at least not living in small town South Africa.
Yeah.
What do you think is society where everyone's sort of emancipated from societal conditioning and cultural conditioning and everything, and everyone's sort of completely open? What do you think a society like that would look like? And do you think there have
It
been...
look like Osho's ashram.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, no. Afterwards, go Google it and you'll find out. So I dropped that one there for you. You can go and look that out. I don't know. I don't think we will. Idealistically, it's like people say we believe in world peace. It's great, right? But I mean, it's great to have ideals to aspire to, but will that in reality really take place?
No.
Do you think it will?
No.
Why not?
No.
I think the human condition, who we are as humans, doesn't allow that to happen over time. There could be moments or times of it. I think world peace doesn't exist in this plane of existence.
It exists.
Personally, yeah. And this plane of existence that we perceive now as our reality, I think world peace is a great ideal, but for it to actually exist continuously in this time and space, I don't know. My opinion is that I don't think it will. I'm not saying don't aspire for it, but I think the way our human conditioning works, or who we are as humans, doesn't allow for that to necessarily happen. We're too different.
Let's bring it down from world peace and just assume that there's a community or whatever, whereby the whole sort of quote unquote what makes us human, but rather the conditioning of humanity, of like, what you've experienced when you've grown up. If everyone were to be emancipated from that,
Okay, you mean so there's no people don't grow up with preconceived ideas about God or culture or everything. Everyone is treated equally, fairly,
yeah,
and there's no.
as though we would predicate our views on the world on the experiences that we have, as opposed to letting other people's experiences influence our perception of the world. You go from a basis of experience as opposed to going from a basis of like what society says or what culture says. Do you think that if there were a collection of those people,
But how would you get there?
people would need to break it down?
No,
Like
but it breaks down over time, right? Because you cannot be born like that, right? Because at the age of 18, there is experiences or things that have formed you to be in a certain way already.
of course.
Like, I understand what you're saying, the space that you're talking about, but how do you get to that space without having people with previous experiences and previous conditioning to get there? Because you're not born at 18, right?
Plus, you're not born with a language of like knowledge, with a language of all these things that bias your view of the world. So would all these people?
Even hypothetically,
speak?
if people were born at 18, it's like boom, we're in this world now we experience. But that's not a reality, right? There's that 18 years or 10 or whatever that forms you to a certain point, and then those experiences will be very much dependent where you're at, unless you can ensure that every single person would have exactly the same experience.
Yeah, but
Right.
if we were to say let's reverse the order, so it's not that you go from a basis of experience. Let's say you're regular people, and then we get to like the age of 30 or whatever, and progress, and we somehow manage to break down our conditioning in the way that we perceive the world, to the magnitude that we're no longer that it no longer influences us. So the conditioning that we've experienced throughout our lives, we've recognized it, and it no longer influences us, which is what many in the Sanskrit scriptures they call this samadhi or something. Yeah, it's like essentially where you've emancipated through whether it may be meditation or whatever, and you can really experience the true self.
Yeah, but that's why you don't exist on this plane.
On that other dimension of reality.
That's why I say this plane, this plane of existence that we comfortably call reality, that doesn't happen here. Those people who have emancipated themselves from that, they don't really exist in this space anymore. Their perception or their understanding of the world puts them
at another
in a different plane. Because as they say, right, the continuous cycle of rebirth, that's what needs to be broken. And this is where we break it, is on Earth. So once that cycle is broken, you're not here anymore. You're in another plane.
Would you say it's genuinely possible for someone like in our sort of how we've grown up and, well, as you say, on our plane of existence, would you say it's possible for someone to fully genuinely let go of how they've been, formed up until the age of, I don't know, example 18?
To emancipate themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Or do you think there's always going to be this sort of underlying something that's affecting you?
I'd like to believe that it's possible.
Right, you have to make some big changes.
Like you
can't like keep going to school and everything.
Yeah. It depends. Where your starting point is, right? For example, for a boy who grows up in India, if you read autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, like he on an early age started that journey and was able to emancipate himself in this lifetime. But how he would say it is, because he already the previous lifetimes before was leading up to that point, right?
I read that one, but also another autobiography by this guy that I met in an ashram in India in February, and his autobiography is practically the same. I mean, the theory behind it is practically the same. The souls evolved over the past lives and put him in a position where now he was sort of destined or fated to emancipate and sort of
Escape Samsara.
subscribe to
There's
higher.
Yeah.
And that's insane. I mean, when I read the autobiography, some of the things that happen, I mean, obviously it's a lot of sacrifice. He leaves his house at the age of 18 to explore the Himalayas, and
Yeah.
some of the stories
Is
are
that the one where the guy's like running naked through a field?
yeah. I mean, some of the stories are crazy. For instance, like it has to do with our perception of reality and what's good and bad. So
Yeah.
he went to this I forgot what it was called, but it was a cemetery. I forgot the name. It escapes me. But he went to this cemetery, and there were many people in trances. And at some point, he was a very young boy. I think he was 10 or 11. And at some point, he sees a naked man with like a couple people chasing him. A naked man, full beard, full hair.
Yeah, that's immediately. Whoa.
Just sprinting, just like sprinting, and he has
in a graveyard.
Yeah. And apparently he was very. I might be a slightly inaccurate story in terms of the overall, but and apparently he was smiling, and from us we're like, that guy's crazy, but it could be perceived. I mean, that he seemed ecstatic. He seemed
euphoric, right?
Euphoric.
Yeah.
Another where.
Yeah, or he could have taken some substance.
Yeah, or
placed him in such a good
but the point is, I mean, he could have the fact that he can take off all of his clothes and quote unquote expose himself, which is what we say, right? You expose yourself when you take off your clothes, and not feel a shred of humiliation.
Yeah.
Or the humiliation.
But that humiliation is assumed though, unless the people had a chat with him about it.
Well, you're also with like a bunch of strangers, right? Like this guy didn't know the guy running.
Yeah. But like that's what I find crazy. And also, I mean, a whole bunch of other experiences, but I won't get into that because we don't have time. But it's.
What is the time? That's what we're all good. We're all good.
No, we're all good, but we should diversify the topics a little. But it's just crazy how almost not supernatural, but how limited our perception of reality is.
Yeah, I'll give you a simple example. I don't know if you guys seen that video where they asked, because they wanted to highlight how we stereotype girls, for example, right? So they ask a girl, okay, run, and they record her, and then they ask the girl, okay, now run again and run like a girl. Then the girl goes and runs differently. And or they say, okay, throw the ball. A girl throws the ball, and they say, okay, now throw the ball like a girl. And she throws the ball differently. And to me, that speaks to that point of perception or stereotyping in a way. Like the girl runs like she would normally run, so she is running like a girl. Then you ask her to run like a girl, she adapts the behavior to run like a girl as perceived by society. Right? And I find that fascinating. If you get a chance, go Google it. And it was an experiment that they did, and it's fascinating how our perceptions are shaped. Right?
Yeah, but then what are we? Because with that shaped perception of reality of a girl running like that, it's obviously an inaccuracy because girls don't actually run like that.
Yeah.
So
where does it come from?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if we want to know who we really are, it's us in the absence of that perception of a girl running in that way.
Yeah, because that's what Goethe says, right? Like, because that idea for that girl or for us, we can relate. If you say run like a girl, right? Or throw a ball like a girl, right? It's we've been conditioned to perceive it like that, right? Where was it? Is it our society has conditioned us? Is it our media that's conditioned us? It's all these things. If you really want to freak yourself out, go read Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. That's
surveillance capitalism.
Surveillance Capital. Yeah, she was also interviewed in that Social Experiment, or she was that lady with kind of big bush of hair.
Yeah.
Read her book,
and it
and it's just how we are being shaped. And she phrases it as we have a right to the future tense. The current social media companies are denying us our right to the future tense because they know more about our behavior than we know ourselves. So we are being shaped as a profit mechanism for these companies, and that's
scary.
That's powerful because you don't want to. You'd like to believe that the way you make decisions are your decisions.
Yeah, that
but
you
what
have
if it's
free will.
not? Free will is so important to us as humans, right?
Constitutional right.
My right.
Yeah, but and I mean in the documentary we had, I think podcast episode 3 was all about this.
Yeah.
There's a documentary on Netflix that came out called The Social Dilemma.
Social dynamic. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
one I think I said the wrong title before.
Yeah, but that's where like I think most of us like younger people were really taken aback, because to think that like they're catering, like their algorithms, they're people that
Go read her book, because she draws in so much more depth into it. She goes into where it actually started, how it was deliberately done, and how it's been deliberately manipulated over time. How laws have been adapted for this and everything.
Ooh.
Because that documentary was based on actually her book. She's so intelligent, it's scary. And she's so good at unpacking these things. And, I read that book somewhere, okay, I need to take a break a little bit, because this is just,
It's crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, listen, we've got 5 minutes left of the pod. Yeah, 5. Okay. Because I was confused because it's for like.
I'll end with a funny story for you later if you want. You do your stuff first, and then I'll tell you the story about the baboon who stole my Bob Dylan tape.
Where did
Because you want to know it now, right? A baboon who stole my Bob Dylan tape. You want to know.
So,
You want to
any
know.
stories about baboons?
Yeah, any particular stories about Bob Dylan tapes?
Now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
If you want.
Okay, so it was the same place. Earlier on, I talked about Omkarishwar and that the island on the river, and we lived in the school master's room that was this size. So every night we made a fire outside, and we sat there around the fire and chatting and drinking chai and whatnot with all our backpacks in the room. We just slept on the floor in our sleeping bags. So. It's insane. It feels like it's out of a dream, man. So we're sitting there. It was like, who was it? It was 4 of us: me, John, this weird dude, and then Jake, I think. And we were sitting there chatting, drinking chai, and this troop of was it baboons or black people? No, it was actually baboons. They came, and it's like. It was so bizarre and surreal. We sat there around the fire and we chilled and we talking, and this troop of baboons came and they kind of, and then this big dude, he just came in. It's like he joined us. He just sat down there, like we're sitting there, and there's this moment where we just
Chilling
a
with
few
the
monkeys have enjoyed it. So we're sitting around the fire. It's like, what's up? And the baboon is sitting there, he's enjoying the fire. He didn't actually take any of our food, and he just kind of looked around. And he got up. He marched into our room. He opened up my backpack. My backpack had a zip at the top where I put it's prior to iPods and stuff, so it was still a Walkman with tapes. Right, so he opened up the zip casually. He didn't even look back. He was just in there. He ruffled through my tapes. He took the Bob Dylan tape, came down. He sat there next to us with the Bob Dylan tape in his hand, almost like he's challenging us. What you gonna do?
He smacks it
And
into
then,
the thing.
and he looked at the tape and he got off and he just casually left with my Bob Dylan tape. It's like, who does that? What kind of monkey takes a man's Bob Dylan tape? I only had one.
He probably has the receiver though, like at home.
He got the
At least he has good
Walkman.
taste, right?
Because he like looked for them and he's like, oh, that's the one, Bob Dylan. And then,
He didn't take my Spice Girl tape. He took the Bob Dylan tape. No, it was just so bizarre. He sat there, and then, even after he left, it's like, did that happen? did that really just happen? Did that baboon take my Bob Dylan tape? He did. It was just so bizarre.
what do you think those animals think when they like come next to
I don't know. I think in my head, because I'm thinking as a human, and then transplanting those thoughts onto this baboon. So it's like I'm thinking, hey fellas, what's up?
He's like,
It's just there. This is fun. This is my town. You're a guest here, so I'm gonna take my dues and then I'm gonna leave. That's how I kind of visualize it in a way. And there we went.
I guess it sort of shows that like even they're not just some like random animal, right? Like there must be some sort of connection that they have with being with humans and stuff.
It's
that
similar enough
exactly.
in creature type in type that he just sat there, no fear.
I wonder how much you could condition a monkey the way you condition a human.
That'll be the question. Did you see that? What's that? That was a show that was on Netflix. The first season was their Space Force.
Space Force, yeah.
Space Force, because they conditioned this chimpanzee to do all these things.
What did he do?
I think he ate the dog.
What?
Yeah, or something. It's like you gotta. I'm trying to think of the episode now,
That does
but
not sound very ethical.
no, it wasn't ethical. But they sent a monkey and a dog to space, and they were living on a spaceship. And then there was an accident, and the monkey was trained in taking some tools to go and fix things. And then I think
then
the
he ate
monkey
the dog.
disappeared.
I don't mean training though. Like imagine if you could train a monkey to stereotype something.
Like he's like, oh, that's the South
Like,
African
imagine-
guy that came from.
Like
He
if
must
you
not
could
poke
stereotype him to
Yeah.
take a banana from like a girl rather than a guy because he thinks the girl is weaker.
Weaker. That would be.
I
fun.
wonder if I think probably brain-wise, their brains might be capable of.
That connection,
But
but I
if
don't know if
that
it would be a
can-
if they're
stereotype.
metacognitive, like I doubt.
Yeah,
they,
would
like,
you call it a stereotype?
Yeah.
I mean,
Because you can teach a behavior, but the monkey would not maybe perceive it as a stereotype. It would just be an adapted behavior.
Yeah, it would
if you
just be
want
what
to
he's been-
call it a stereotype, though, the monkey needs to recognize that he's thinking about the fact that the
Yeah.
girl is
Yeah.
weaker than the
I'm
guy.
gonna flip that on humans, right? So if you are stereotyping, but you don't know that you're actively doing that, because maybe you're just blissfully unaware.
We're just animals.
Then that's
Are
just-
you actually doing something wrong, or are you?
Are you a baboon that steals Bob Dylan from a guy?
Yeah, it's at least there's monkeys who's driving to good music now.
Do you think people will like ever? Do you think at some point in like a couple hundred years? That's a very bad approximation, but you'll get what I mean. Too. Do you think?
I doubt that.
Do you think doms would be able to like? Do you think we'd be able to talk to animals? Like, do you think we'd be able to like? The baboon like pulls up and we're like, "Hi, how are you?" And he looks at you, and then through like some technology, the guy can like
I
respond.
would
or
love
something.
that, but I don't think in this
In this,
space
Plane
and
of
time,
reality.
it's not going to happen. But I like where you're going with this fantasy-wise.
It would be sick, though.
But I think genuinely, like, there probably is a way to get at least close to that in some way. I mean, I'd hope so. It seems pretty cool. But I don't know. Have you ever heard of the gorilla Coco?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, is that the one with the?
in love.
Yeah,
with
yeah. So it's
It
just.
rings a bell.
It was a gorilla. It died a few years ago, I think,
Yeah.
but it lived for quite a long
She.
time. She?
She.
She, sorry, yeah.
It.
I forgot the gender, but yeah, so she,
So sexist. They're just talking about stereotyping.
Unbelievable.
Sorry.
anyways, so she grew up with the same like owner, or not owner, but like the person who trained her at the zoo, and she grew up with her for her entire life. And some people say that it was sort of just like actions that she was taught to do with her hands, but at least with her person there and with other people around the zoo, she was able to sort of like explain things using sign language that they taught her. So, and I know that there's this one clip of where she's sort of explaining how an animal feels about something. But not obviously it's not like something super complex, it's like really simple, but it shows that they have this sort of, if you really form a connection with the animal, you really like, train them to be able to express themselves.
Speak our language,
yeah, exactly.
they can express how
they're
they feel.
really able to like this kind of shows that the gorilla was able to about their own life, the way they feel, and she also constantly had like she felt emotions and stuff, and in a way where she had 2 pet cats which she chose herself. The gorilla, she like picked out of cats that were offered to her. She picked out 2 cats and had them as pets for her entire life, for like their entire life, but they died pretty quickly. And then she would explain like how she's sad about it. She would say like she'd do like crying with her hands and stuff. So
crazy.
it's one like really specific example, and
But I mean that shows that it's there, right?
it's something's possible.
I mean,
yeah.
you know the woman who went to live with the gorillas from a really young age.
Yeah. I don't know what her name is, but yeah.
She like went to the jungle.
Isn't that Jane Goodall?
Jane, yeah. She.
I teach a Goodall in my class, Michael Goodall.
Yeah.
But they're not like.
No, basically, she told this story that there was a mother and a son, like monkey, and the mother died of some disease or something. The son went to their nest that they would usually like cuddle in together.
Yeah.
Then he went to the dead mother and he kind of just curled up next to her and died of grief.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, but I think animals understand emotions, even if they don't know if anybody who's had a pet or a dog that's really close to them, they know how you feel.
Yeah.
Like if you really had a bad day or a sad day,
They'll
your dog or your cat will come
100%.
to comfort you in their own way. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the language capacity or our language capacity, but there's a capacity to understand feeling, and they would act on, because why else, if you're that sad, would your dog or your cat come to try and comfort you? There must, that level of
Yeah.
understanding, and
emotional.
it's not based on language. It's an emotional thing. We focus so much as humans on what comes out of this hole, right? Which is, I think, it limits us, because this, you can talk so much rubbish with this.
Yeah.
But you can't talk rubbish with.
Yeah.
this.
Did you see? There's that TED talk of that guy who decided for 20 years to not talk and listen.
Oh,
It's really powerful. He said, like, just how he's thinking altered and things, because we are so busy talking. Like, how much of our time do we actually spend listening? Just be quiet and just perceive with our other senses, because we just want to, like, even this, what we're doing right now, right? We're sharing, and there were moments which I think there were times where we experience emotions in the same way. Like you were saying, you kind of felt that
Yeah.
goosebumps and that energy, right? But we do too little of that and too much of this.
too much.
Yeah.
If you think of sort of, as Philip said, like, have emotions and whatnot, and they recognize that they have emotions and they can express their emotions. So if you look at an animal as sort of like that, it humanizes them a lot. And then if you look at sort of the world and how we treat animals, or how we behave as humans relative to animals, we're probably perceived. I mean, we have all our geopolitical conflicts within ourselves, and we're like, oh, the US and blah blah blah. But if you think of it from like an animal perspective, we're probably just like the Roman Empire. Like, we're the people that
we're
have
the parasites,
destroyed
right?
everyone.
Dry and then we leave.
Exactly. We break up. We kill. We literally go into like countries, let's say, which is like a forest with some animals, and we break it up and we kill whatever, and then we're doing slavery with the pigs and the cows and stuff, for example.
Yeah.
If you change the way that you perceive animals as less of like a service to humans and more of something that we coexist with, like another sort of human colony of equal.
But it's like, if you look at the evolutionary biology, right? We have evolved to be slightly different than the other animals in terms of mental capacity, right? In how we think and do, and our capacity to manipulate the natural world. I suppose the animal's ability, like the gorillas and the chimpanzees, they're starting to manipulate their world through tools. And there's a few animals who can do that, but it's to a much lesser extent compared to how humans are able to manipulate their world. Now, it's sad that in many cases we've chosen to manipulate the natural world
For the worst.
in a bad way. But I think there's more and more positive things coming out, how people are actually using the natural world in a good way. If you look at all these proteins that they're making out of algae now, that can deal with things of world hunger, all those things. I think, yes, we do terrible things, but I think as a species, we are getting more. We understand the world a bit more. Not everybody, but I think as a species, there's a tendency to walk towards that a bit more now. People are a bit more conscious of being sustainable, or the harm that I do through my actions.
Only
But
recently.
I think another thing we actually could look to learn from animals is, I think we're the only species, except for maybe some cannibalistic species, that is really like adamant on like killing each other, you know? Like there's wars between countries where the whole point is to like get a higher, you know? And with every other animal species, their whole like purpose is to just reproduce and make sure we don't die, right?
But in that reproduction, where the challenge comes with animals, like if you look at the male animals, right, they fight each other out.
Yeah.
And even like
Right, is that violence that the dominant one gets to mate.
in the Congo, there's in one of the like deep forest in the Congo, there's a chimp colony, and these guys have expanded their territory so much, like, you don't mess with them, and they
So
kill.
like kind of the Roman Empire of the Congo.
No, they kill. Like they were very small. Again, the name escapes me, but they were a very small colony, and progressively they've grown more and more aggressive, and they've colonized everything. And so if you think, like, if you try humanizing animals, like for instance, the Crusades, that was basically, you could think of it as like two chimp like yeah,
chimps having a go at each
chimp,
other.
yeah, like no, like two chimp colonies or tribes just messing each other up, and the winner just gets it all. But
But animals do fight for territory.
they do,
Right? If it's different clans and things.
but
right?
we are animals. We also fight for territory.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
But then we're kind of thinking ourselves of as different clans, right? Based on our
Yeah. Like
Geological
within
position.
our race, we have different clans that fight it out.
If you I'm just thinking like how ethical, because for all we know there could be another, like an animal right now or a species right now that in billions of years evolved to be not only metacognitive but a lot more effective than us.
It will happen. It's when you think about it, right? If you look at on a universal scale, on a galaxy scale, I think it's extremely arrogant of humans to think that life can
We're
only
the only
exist
ones,
here.
yeah.
How is that? That's an awful waste of space.
Mhm.
Like, what is all that other space for? Like, I mean, I'm not having any evidence. I'm not saying I believe in aliens. I'm just questioning, like, why would it be? Is this the only space in all this galaxy that is ready for life to form and creatures to evolve up to become humans?
Mhm.
Like, really? It just seems to me, what is that other space for?
Yeah.
And if we like imagine the way that we treat animals, and then imagine the way that a species that is perhaps more evolved than us would
It's
treat
like
us.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, like imagine that species, that some animal over here in a billion years is so much more evolved than us, and they make us the pigs. Like they make us.
But wasn't that what that Cro-Magnon did to Neanderthal?
Yeah.
Because Neanderthal was not the smartest tool in the shed, let's face it, right? So Cro-Magnon was kind of a little bit more, hey buddy, I know what's going on here, and they're all gone.
All of them are gone.
Like look at the dodos. They only died out because they were not the sharpest bird on the Australian continent, right? It's like, but I'm not saying for it. I'm just saying this is what
Just
actually
like-
happened, right?
What happens when we're no longer the sharpest? We all
Probably-
die off.
Probably happened. That's
Just
what's
the
wrong with
natu-
that?
And it bears the
There's
question.
nothing wrong with
right?
it, but should we treat if it's not a necessity, should we treat animals and derive and maximize what we can get from them? If it's not a necessity for us to be killing them, because at some point, like
Okay,
we will
so
be.
If you need food, for example, do you think it's okay then to hunt the animal for your food?
Yeah,
To
like,
actually hunt it.
I mean,
But to mass produce it, that's the issue that you have. with
yeah,
it.
because hunting is just natural. Like lions kill zebras, whatever. I mean, that's
So it's the mass
I mean, that's-
production
yeah.
for profit that's the issue, not the eating meat itself that's the issue.
Yeah.
no, because aliens would have. I mean, I believe in the.
Oh, so you know a few aliens, do you?
Yeah, I mean, John. Yeah, I mean, no, that's not.
Please.
But if aliens do exist, they would come here and just.
But why do we assume that they are a higher form of evolution than us?
Yeah.
Because whenever you look at fantasy movies, right, the alien is not coming down here and we're above them.
Yeah.
Right, they're always more intelligent. They've got superior technology. It's always assumed.
Because if they
Because
come
they
here,
know
if they
that.
come,
Because
if
if
they come
they've
here,
been
they
able
need
to
to be
get
more.
here.
If
Yeah,
they're
fair enough.
Because
But
we
to
haven't
be
been
fair,
able. Yeah.
To
Yeah,
be fair, looking at the state of the Earth and the state of humans,
Why would
I
they
think
even
someone more
want-
intelligent than us wouldn't want
They would-
anything to
they'd be
do
like,
with that.
man, did you see what's going down there?
The Earth is- and they go to the next
Next
planet.
galaxy. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sick though. I really hope. I mean, I'm pissed that in my own lifetime I haven't gotten the opportunity to experience like
Aliens.
space travel.
Aliens.
No, not
But
only.
if you look at the exponential growth of technology, look at Elon Musk. It was the first time like a private firm based a rocket that went to space.
Yeah. And that was within.
If it becomes profitable, it's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And we
It
go
will
like,
eventually happen. There will be breakthroughs on these things. There's exponential
I
growth.
can't wait.
We are going to Mars in 2022, I think.
And they discovered water on Mars, right? At some point,
Frozen
frozen water. Honestly,
Things grow so fast.
Yeah.
Think about it. When I was your age, and I know I'm old, I'm growing the beard, right? But imagine this, right? When I was your age, there was no mobile phones, no internet. That was not a thing that we used.
and now it's normal.
Now, can you imagine your world?
Without.
Like,
Without
say you're supposed to meet your friend, you go to the movies at 10. How are you going to communicate with her that you're going to be late?
Yeah. You don't.
Right, and this is just one generation gone. It was just, I was telling you guys in class, I waited 8 hours for my parents the one time. They had to pick me up. I was waiting outside the mall for 8 hours because I had an accident. But there was no way to tell me. So I'm like walking around there being furious, keep buying food and stuff.
Buying food.
So what do? You're 8 hours in the mall.
Exactly.
Right, but it's how quickly things evolve and change just in one lifetime. I think that rate of change
Is enough.
is scary sometimes. Like, for example, my mom has been left behind. Right, when I tried to Skype with her, she doesn't know how it works. Like, if you cannot use technology today, the world's left you behind. So if I don't keep up with it,
You're also
like if the rate of change between my generation and your generation versus if your generation is my age talking to your generation, the rate of change is going to be it's going to far exceed the difference between us.
we're gonna see like.
But the thing is, it's changing so fast that we don't have the time to look back and think, is this changing correctly?
Exactly, and that is the question.
Yeah.
That is the question, the ethics of change. Like we're so focused on the change that we're not stopping to question to what extent is IA and the development of these things ethical, or are we allowing these decisions? Because there's not an ethical code of conduct when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
All right, I remember that's one of the questions that we debated in my TOK class a year or two back. Like, all these things are making our life better in a certain sense, but how ethical? This is infusing in our life, infused into our life. How ethical is it? Where's that ethical rules? It's not written yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they never took a step back because there's a Moore's law, which is exactly. It's like how much stuff grows, and for example, with like CPU storage, it's grown tenfold.
Moore's law,
it's called Moore's law, and so knowing that, like within the having conversations about like the ethics of AI, you can't have a conversation if you can't keep up with where AI is, because in the time span of 1 year, AI is not what it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
At the end of the year,
People right now are still saying when AI takes over.
AI exists.
It's already taken over.
So it's all
Beautiful.
That's the thing. When we grow up, like when we're like 50,
When you
60,
grow up, so you've admitted you've not grown up yet.
Yeah, no.
Okay, quality. I was waiting for that moment.
But when we're like 60 and like 70, we're probably gonna see like on the news, which is like some stuff that's gonna pop up out of our hand. We're gonna see like alien discovered by something, and like a picture of an alien and like Elon Musk talking to the guy. And it's gonna be
Elon Musk be wheeling himself.
But it'll be so normal. Like no one will question it.
Be like, oh, another alien.
Elon Musk is gonna be a computer. Like
probably. Like he's gonna become
Consciousness would be downloaded
immortal.
Exactly.
Well, how ethical do you think immortality is, in terms of like if we're a person and we make ourselves like Elon Musk manages to get his OS and throw it on like a computer, and he exists forever.
I don't think we're meant to. I don't want to. I look forward to dying. I don't mean that, I think that came out slightly wrong. Very wrong.
Like you've already had enough.
I'm going to rephrase that a little bit. No, but I mean, I look forward to having a full life, and then that life is in this space, in this time for me is finished. I don't want to continuously live forever. Right? I'm having an amazing life. And I'm going to continue having an amazing life. And all these experiences, I mean, I see my grandchildren, but I don't want to see my grandchildren's word ever end, because the experience is going to become less special by continuing it. You will come to a place when things are enough, right? There's so much experience, but you want to pack it in one life, right? Because if you pack it over immortality, how special would it really be?
What about like special people, like people that could really contribute to society, like Elon Musk? What if like we had a select few who could become immortal?
How do we decide who is?
Everybody should live a decent life and then say goodbye. You've contributed, thank you, because there will be new ones born.
Yeah.
Yeah, like imagine you pull up to the planet and they're like 10k people on a computer.
Oh, sorry, my daughter is waiting for me.
Oh, okay.
I forgot,
Well,
like, time ran a little bit away. Sorry.
that's no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
watching.
you so much.
Sorry.
And yeah, actually, thank you for watching, and thank you to you because
It was wonderful having
it
you.
was
This
genuinely
was great.
Yes, it was
fantastic.
good.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed it. Hopefully, I kind of met your expectations. We can talk later.
Oh,
I'm kind
it's
of like on my
fantastic,
ATL skills
Far
where I
exceeded.
said in terms of
In terms of
IB
media
level.
literacy, maybe like a 5 or a 4. But
You
I
put me
mean,
on a 5.
you know, I mean, yeah, I'll put you on a 5. Give you the benefit of the doubt.
Standardized maybe a
This
6.
guy, he's your friend.
But
No,
thank
this
you.
is really good. It's enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I got to tell some of my stories.
Yeah.
Which I like the best. Yeah.